Nacho!
Hello
What's
there.
up, everybody? Hey, how's it going, brother? I love that intro. I'm gonna probably say it every single time, but I just love that so much. I love the song, and I love Jack Black saying "Nacho." It's just always been amazing. But let's get this started, everybody. I'm Nacho Jedi, and with me today I have a really close friend of mine, Danny. You can see his thing is over here. Yeah, this time it's over here. Whereisdanny? You can always follow him on Instagram. But we've been friends for a very long time, and I'm very excited to do this episode with you, my friend.
Hey, it's an honor, man. Thank you for having me on. It's my first podcast interview. Very exciting, especially the fact that it's today specifically because today is May 25th. It's the 47th anniversary of the original Star Wars release in theaters in America. So it's the perfect day to be on this podcast, Nacho Jedi, a podcast completely dedicated to everything Star Wars related, and it's fantastic. You know, that intro was pretty unique. Believe it or not, I have not seen Nacho Libre. It was a pretty big movie for a lot of our childhoods, for everybody who was a kid in the mid 2000s. However, I did not see that. Still haven't seen it. One of these days, maybe. But uh,
Well,
just the fact that it's Jack Black screaming that, it reminds me of Kung Fu Panda, where he's like, "I love kung fu."
yeah,
He's always
yeah,
screaming.
basically the same vibe, same
Uh,
vibe.
yeah.
But I can't believe you haven't seen Nacho Libre. We
Hmm.
got okay. We got to make it happen.
For
Okay,
sure.
we can't just sit here and let you continue to go through your life without seeing Nacho Libre. That's acceptable.
Uh-huh.
Well, like I said earlier, we've known each other for a very, very long time.
Hmm.
And actually, like one of the biggest things that brought us together was Star Wars.
Hmm.
And I just hit my cup, but yeah. Um, and you know what? From very young, we were in elementary school when Revenge of the Sith came out. And I think we really bonded over that movie specifically because it was the new hype, new thing. Me and you really got into the Anakin and Obi-Wan mindset,
Hmm.
or like the whole thing behind them. We both kind of just fell in love with the movie. Um, but yeah, like I said, it's an honor to have you here, brother, and I'm really
Appreciate it.
excited for this specific episode.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
You and I met specifically at the Okoye United Methodist after school program, right? And um, it was a fantastic program. First of all, I got to meet so many excellent people. My mom put me and my brother Philip, who's 4 years younger than I am, she enrolled both of us in this after school program so that we'd be able to have somewhere to go after school. And because both my parents worked 1 to 2 jobs, and so they'd be busy, they wouldn't necessarily be available to pick us up after school. So I'm really happy that she did enroll Philip and I in this program, because it was the seed, the spark, trying to find the right analogy here that would best equate it, but it was essentially the first step in a long journey that led me to where I'm at right now at this point in my life. Because going to this after school program, I got to meet not just a lot of great people, but specifically, that's where I caught the movie bug. You know, we had our guidance counselor, Mr. Ryan. His name is
yep,
Robert Ryan DeWeese, but I still affectionately referred to him as Mr. Ryan because that's how we knew him.
Mr.
That's how we addressed him.
Oh yeah.
At the time, you remember this. Like he was a big comic book guy. He was a big movie guy, and he'd be talking to us, the guys specifically. We'd have guy talk, and he'd be talking to us about like what was big at the time. And at the time, it was the Saw movies, right? The Saw
Yeah,
movies at that
they
point.
were huge.
Yeah, it was big. It was like 2006. It's all coming back to me now, but it was like essentially it was 2006. The third one had like recently come out, and so like he was explaining to us the mythology of the Saw movies and like why Jigsaw did what he did, why he kidnapped those people, why he tortured them. And I was like, this sounds insane. This is terrifying, but it was also so intriguing the way he worded it. And like he would do the
Yeah.
same thing with like Marvel comics. He'd talk about Marvel Civil War in the comics. This is years before they made the Civil War movie, Captain America Civil War. But at the time, the Civil War comic had just come out, and like Spider-Man reveals his identity to the public, and so he'd be talking about these things very passionately. And being at that age, you're a very impressionable age, and so like just seeing that passion he had for movies and comics is very infectious and inspiring to see that. And it was around that same time, being at this after school program between fourth to fifth grade. Um, but specifically, I remember it was fourth grade where around that time, starting to go there and like I met you, I met Carter, John
Yep.
Longshore, so many
Yep.
significant people. But it was around that time where I started discovering the movies of Steven Spielberg, because at that same time, 2005, you mentioned obviously Revenge of the Sith had come out, but specifically War of the Worlds came out around that time where I discovered this
Yeah.
movie called Jaws, and I was blown away by it to begin with, because obviously Jaws is one of the greatest movies ever made, but that was the movie that really made me fall in love with the filmmaking process. Like I got bit by the movie bug really bad after I saw Jaws. And it was around that time that War of the Worlds was like on demand. And when Philip and I weren't at the church's after school program, we were at this house where we were watched over by a very generous, loving um, Latina caretaker, Senora Beatrice. And essentially it was there where I saw War of the Worlds for the first time, and I was like, wait, this movie, this brand new movie, was made by the same guy who directed Jaws all those years ago, Steven Spielberg. And that was it. After that, I was like, okay, like this man is a legend. He's an incredible filmmaker. So like I discovered and decided very early on that what I wanted to do for a living was to make movies, was to be a filmmaker, as a result of seeing those movies around the same time. And then Jurassic Park, like it was also like the first time I had seen that. It was generally around that same time period. So
Yeah.
that was it. And that, I don't think that would
And
have happened if it wasn't for the Akoi Oaks program, where I was around this guy who's very like passionate about movies and comics, and one thing led to another. And it was at the church where I remember, I don't know if you were there when I said it, but I remember saying it to Mr. Ryan and um, Carter or whoever else was there, that I did want to be a filmmaker when I grew up. And that's evolved over time. That was when I was in fourth grade. And of course, I still want to be a filmmaker. But when I got older, when I got in high school, I started noticing that I was really good in English classes. Like I was excelling, and I was really good with language arts. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm really good at this particular subject. Complete opposite with math, but with language arts and English, I was excelling. So um, I really embraced the writing aspect in high school. So where I'm at right now, post high school, is I definitely want to be a screenwriter and kind of work my way up the ladder, as a lot of people do. And my journey definitely reflects what a lot of other people have been through before me, and what a lot of people are going through right now as kids, and everybody who will come long after me, which is like you get inspired by something or someone, and you pursue your specific interest in your own way, and like everybody has their own journey. But yeah, definitely the works of Steven Spielberg, and discovering Star Wars around that same time. I think I had seen Star Wars before I saw Jaws and War of the Worlds, but essentially how I got into Star Wars, and how Philip also got into Star Wars with me, was me renting the VHS tapes of Star Wars, the original movies, from the local library, and just bringing it over to our house. And he and I watched a lot of movies together on VHS. And so just discovering those movies at such an impressionable age, like once you see it at that age, like you're hooked. And
oh,
there's also
100%.
yeah, yeah,
100%. And I will say, like, continuing on with the Okoye because I want to make sure that this gets out there before we continue to move forward. But definitely, like the whole Mr. Ryan like introducing us and really getting us into like movies like this, like it got to the point that we were like critiquing movies. Like, remember that we had the book and we would sit here and rate them like 1 to 5 stars on how great. And it's like every single Star Wars movie was 5 stars because we were just like, we love Star Wars. That was no matter what, you know, we're kids. Everything about Star Wars at that time was just amazing. So everything 5 star, 5 star, 5 star. Revenge of the Sith was like the best. And then we did with other movies as well, like Jaws and stuff like that. Like, different types of votes, but I will say that definitely from very young age, you always show that love and that passion for movie, for cinema, I would say, and definitely rubbed off on me too. And and you, I'm not gonna let you skip this, but you did have your own film, 2 hour film. I have it here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Battle Stations.
Oh yeah.
You made it when you were what, in elementary or middle school? Is when
No,
you started.
definitely not elementary school, but it was 8th grade when we made the first movie. Battle Stations was essentially this 34-minute improv type of movie where we had Nerf guns, and it was like me and my buddies, and Philip was there as one of the main characters as well. And we were just having fun coming up with like a random improv story, and that experience making the first movie, which was like 34 minutes, as I mentioned, everybody had a great time working on it, and they lobbied for a sequel, which I wasn't initially in favor of doing. I was just like, oh, this was like a fun experience, but like I'm interested in doing other things, and like I didn't really have a plan for a sequel. But because of that response, when we watched the final product of the first Battle Stations at my house, like they all loved it. They had a fantastic time, and they wanted to make a sequel. They lobbied for it. So I was like, okay, well, if you guys want a sequel, we'll make a sequel. So the summer of 2010, I wrote the sequel, like, on paper. And I definitely studied a lot of sequels around that time I was writing. Philip and I and my mom were in Colombia at the time. And so I brought a bunch of DVDs with me, and I would watch it on my laptop, which had a DVD player in it. And so I especially watched The Empire Strikes Back when it came to writing the sequel to Battle Stations, because like you can't go wrong studying one of the greatest sequels ever made with The Empire Strikes Back. So definitely a lot of influence studying the way Lucas and Irving Kershner executed The Empire Strikes Back, and Lee Brackett, one of the other screenwriters for The Empire Strikes Back. But that was like the perfect movie to study for it, and among others like Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. And so eventually wrote the second movie, and the first 2 years of high school, in between classes and Boy Scouts and my social life and like other things, I would get together with my friends and my brother, and we would make the sequel, which I always envisioned as like a 2-hour movie. And over time, over those 2 years, like I wrote like scenes in the script format. I didn't have like a screenwriting program like Celtics or Final Draft, but I just wrote it on Microsoft Word the way like I saw scripts were formatted, and kind of went with the flow, changed certain things about the story, improved certain aspects of it, and it wasn't finished the first 2 years of high school like I wanted it to. Like we definitely got a lot busier, and eventually it was finished. But post high school, when I had some more time to take a look at the footage, and I put the footage that I had from those first 2 years of high school, and I realized that I had like an hour and 45 minutes worth of a movie here. So it's like, okay, there's a beginning and middle, but there's no end. So if I write an epilogue, that could wrap up, like the loose story threads, and kind of like bring the movie all together, versus like having an hour and 45 minutes worth of movie that just abruptly ends. So, that was an interesting experience getting that movie done. It definitely, it was like having closure on that part of my life, which was a fun and also challenging time in my life because, I was trying to wear a lot of hats while
Hmm.
making the second movie with my friends. Like not only was I the director and screenwriter, but I was also the editor and cinematographer and like coordinator, production coordinator, schedule coordinator. Like, definitely wore a lot of hats, and it was a very humbling kind of experience. But
Yeah. Got to
it
delegate.
was, yeah, delegate, yeah, for sure. And Battle Stations will not be on YouTube. Neither will the second movie be on YouTube because the music I used, I do not have the rights to that. And, it was like part of the American Music Company
Right.
music tracks that we had access to in like middle school and high school TV production classes. But maybe down the road, if I get the rights to those music tracks, then I could release Battle Stations to the public. But only a select few will have seen these movies or have copies of them. Specifically, my friends, the actors who were in them, and I sent you a copy. You and your wife watched it,
Yep.
and
You
definitely,
definitely did.
yeah, I loved hearing your thoughts about it. And it, you would have been the main character in those movies had you and your family not moved to Detroit after fifth grade, because like you and I met at Ocoee Oaks fourth grade, and then we would hang out a lot. We played with lightsabers, and your dad at your wedding in 2018, he pointed out to me, he's like, like I still have this memory of you two just like playing lightsabers in the front yard. Like you guys will
Yeah.
always like, I'll always have that memory of you two, and like you two are still boys to me, but like now you're grown men, and so that was very sweet to hear that. And yeah, we would play
Yeah.
lightsabers together. And you shocked me with the news that you'd be moving to Detroit, and we actually lost contact. I had given you my phone number on a bookmark with my photo on it, which is what every elementary school kid had at that point. And
Yeah.
you had told me years later that the phone number had rubbed off. So
Yeah.
that's why I never got a call.
I was missing like 3 digits. I was like, I don't know what these three numbers are. So I had everything up and I had one of the forward last digits. So I was like, I don't know. I had the very last number. I don't know what was in between the other three.
For
So
sure.
we
Yeah.
definitely lost connection because of that.
Mhm.
But
And this is years
technology
before social
is the
media.
thing.
This is years before social media was such a common
Yep.
thing. Like when I started middle school, I got onto MySpace, just like a lot of
Yeah.
us did. And then it was Facebook. And
Yep.
Facebook obviously lasted so much longer than MySpace did. But it was through Facebook that we eventually reconnected, albeit 10 years later, but we eventually did reconnect. And when we met up in person, it was like just picking up where we left off, you know, literally just like, okay, like this is the same vibe that we had as fifth graders. Now we're just, grown adults, just picking up where we left off and filling each other in on what we missed. But you definitely would have been the main character had you and your family not moved to Detroit. Like, battle stations would have happened, but I think it would have turned out, you know, just as good, if not better, with you as the main character.
Yeah. And here's the photo of us actually reuniting after 10 years of being separate. Like we hadn't seen each other in a long
Separated.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
By this
Uh,
time, like you're already doing your own thing. I was already in the army by then. So it's like life was
mhm.
kind of already like we were adults at this point, you know.
Yeah.
10 years have gone by since the last time we saw each other before this photo. And we met up.
Yeah.
Was this
And
Hollywood studio or Disney Springs? Disney Springs.
this is Disney Springs. You had messaged me saying that you and your family were gonna visit Florida, and I think it was you and Irene, who was your girlfriend at the time. She wasn't your
Mm-hmm.
fiance yet. She wasn't your wife yet, but you guys were still dating. It was you and Irene, and then her sister, who were going to be
Mm-hmm.
visiting. And you hit me up, and you were like, "Hey, like we got to meet up. Like we got to catch up. We got to hang." And I was like, "Oh, absolutely, totally." And so meeting up at this restaurant, literally, we just picked up where we left off, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad that we did. So we can actually do this together. You know, I missed out on Battle Stations, but you did not miss out on the Not Your Jedi podcast. So
Yeah.
finally, finally.
Mhm.
But let's get into something a little bit different. So like my sister said in the previous episode, if any of you guys watched it, that you were not a content creator, but you have a bunch of cool things that, you know, content creators would probably want to have.
Sure.
You've been
Sure.
on multiple shows, yeah, as a cast extra. I know you've been to a handful of premieres. You met a lot of, you know, high profile individuals, whether it's actors or actresses or even composers. Like you've done quite a bit. Just tell me a little bit about like the whole experience of, you know, being an extra on a show and just some of the people that you probably ran into.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, most of my life, Philip and I and our parents, Philip and I grew up in Florida, but not long after you and I reconnected in January of 2017 at Disney Springs in Florida, I had the opportunity to attend UCLA for a summer program focused on creative producing. It was an 8-week program, and I got accepted into it. And I knew from the moment I got accepted, I was like, I need to use this program as the means to kickstart living out in LA. Because I knew myself well enough then, just like I know myself now. I knew that if I just did the 8 weeks and went back to Florida and finished college in Florida, like I would get the taste of it, but like I I needed to stay out there. Like that there was so much joy, so much momentum with getting into that creative producing program that I was like, okay, like this is going to be the means where I move out there. Like this is going to be the opportunity where I'm going to kickstart living out in LA and try to make a career out of being a filmmaker and pursue the arts. And I had this TV production teacher in high school who really pushed us by emphasizing that if you really want to make it in the industry, you got to go to LA. You have to go to LA. Like, and so that stuck with me. And so once I got into the program, and after the 8 weeks, I got an apartment with a friend I had met originally in Florida, and he had moved to California before I did. So Jonathan and I got connected. We became housemates in a studio apartment. I had my side, he had his side. Very humble beginnings. We didn't have a TV at the apartment. Just I would watch movies on the same laptop that I was telling you about earlier, where I studied, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. I would just watch movies on this laptop, and then eventually, he and I parted ways from that living situation, and then I moved in with some really cool people: Matthew Monaco, Ryan Wayne, Gareth Moore, and these guys were all student actors at this school called AMDA, this acting school called AMDA. And so, all this started with going to Okoyoks and catching that movie bug. And so like it's like this ripple effect over the years with having that dream and then like pursuing it, having the opportunity to go to UCLA for a creative producing program, and then to suddenly living out here with really like-minded people, really ambitious, young, hungry people for the industry. And so like they were the perfect roommates to be living with because they're hungry for it. And so at that point, the first apartment I lived in was in Woodland Hills, but this second apartment where I moved in with the AMDA kids um, was in Hollywood. And so it was very surreal, like just living in the middle of Hollywood. And in the time since I've moved out here, because I moved out here to California in the summer of 2017 for that program. And in that time since, I've had fantastic opportunities to attend a lot of events that promote new movies or new TV shows. And a lot of these events are free. And so anyone who's watching this that's interested in moving to LA, like, and is really interested in pursuing the movie industry, it's a very interesting time to be pursuing the movie industry. I'll get into that in a little bit, but essentially a lot of these opportunities are free to the public. You just have to be smart enough to dig and find what's available out there and be quick with it, because you don't have to spend a significant amount of money going to a lot of these events that I've experienced and that I've gone to with my friends, or that I've invited my friends to. Like the American Cinematheque is this organization where they have a couple different movie theaters spread out through LA, some in Santa Monica, some in Hollywood. Uh, they do work with the Egyptian Theater, which is now owned by Netflix. But essentially, they curate different movie programs and week-long symposiums and like movie series, where a lot of some of these movies are brand new movies that are free to the public. You just have to be subscribed to the American Cinematheque to get these emails. And some of them you have to be like a member of the Cinematheque to attend. Like some of the bigger movies these days, they're like members only screenings. But a lot of the ones I've been to have been free. I just have been fortunate enough to see that email immediately and then like register for up to 2 tickets and then get it really quickly before it sells out. Sometimes they sell out really quickly. From my understanding, I believe you do have some photos of some of these events that I've been to, but essentially, if you dig enough and go to websites like the American Cinematheque, or like there's this app called For Your Consideration, FYC, and if you're on that app, it's free. Like they list different screenings when it's like award season time, whether it's for the Emmys or the Oscar season, and all at so many movie theaters all throughout LA, they promote these movies, for awards consideration. And some of these events that I'm also talking about, you do have to be a member of a guild, either the Writers Guild, Directors Guild, or SAG, to be able to attend some of these events. But there's an organization called the Film Independent that I'm a part of, where for like $90 a year, you can be a Film Independent member and be able to get invitations to some of these screenings for new movies or classic movies, or what I'm just referring to now as the award season screeners. And so as long as you're a part of a guild like Film Independent, or if you're lucky enough to be a part of SAG or WGA, the Writers Guild of America, Screen Actors Guild, you have access to so many of these excellent screenings where a lot of the creative talent are there afterwards, the directors, actors, writers, where they stay for a Q&A. And so in the time since the summer of 2017, I've been to a lot of these events, a lot of these screenings, and it's been such a fantastic opportunity, not only to see the movie for free, save a lot of money seeing it for free, but also like just hearing from the creatives themselves and like hearing their process, hearing and actually speaking to them like during these Q&As. A lot of the Q&A aspects of these screenings, like sometimes it could be really cringy because you have people out there who live in LA who are like, oh, hey, I actually have a script for Willow 2 that I'd like to, talk to you about. And Ron Howard's like, oh boy, or, some of these people come to these screenings with the expectations that the people there are just going to like take the script in their hands and like make their movie happen, which is just unrealistic and delusional. But I go for the experience and to learn and to have the opportunity to, mingle with them afterwards, not get their information, not try to solicit myself, but just, I go there to have a good time. And if I'm lucky enough to get a photo with them, I'm definitely going to try to. Sometimes it can get really crowded and, depending on who's there, they can definitely, the crowds swarm and like try to get stuff autographed or, get selfies. But, I'm respectful of the process and I don't go to these screenings to
I would
curry any favor,
Yeah, I understand that. Now, how did you specifically get into like actually becoming an extra on like different shows? So people don't know, but you've been on Euphoria, correct?
Yes.
I believe you were on Euphoria and you were on Ballers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for a fact, I remember you telling me a story about meeting The Rock, quote unquote meeting him. You were there and you
Yeah.
kind of just said a little something quick, but yeah.
Oh,
So
for
how did you
sure.
get one into the whole program or whatever it is to be an
Mhm.
extra? Because maybe somebody out here might be interested. And your experience on both like Euphoria and Ballers and kind of your interaction.
Sure. Yeah. So this, and I'm also going to talk about pre-COVID, because what's been interesting in the time that I've lived in LA since the summer of 2017, there's been so much world history that has happened, not just to the entertainment industry, but just the world in general, that it's been jarring to see the changes in the world and especially the entertainment industry. But essentially, when you move out to LA, it runs like clockwork, productions of movies and shows. This is pre-COVID I'm talking about now. It ran like clockwork, where every day they're shooting something. They're shooting commercials on the streets of Hollywood Boulevard, or shooting in Burbank, Woodland Hills. They shoot everywhere when the season is good, when business is good, when business is booming. Filming is happening everywhere you look. And so there are a lot of casting agencies out here in California, in Los Angeles, because this is the heart of the entertainment industry. One of them that I joined early on because my roommate Jonathan was telling me about it was Central Casting, which is a free casting agency to join. You don't have to pay any fee per month, nothing like that. It's free to join, it's free to register. And once you're with Central, you essentially have a headshot and you have a full body shot. And you will either be contacted for background roles or you hustle for them yourself. I've done both, where I've received text messages from Central Casting asking for my availability, if I'm available to be a background extra on a show, or I've hustled for the jobs myself, where I'm looking on the website. Back in the day, when I first started doing it, they used to post the job listings on Twitter. Those days are long gone. So the job listings are usually on their website. And usually what they use Twitter for now is just like giving tips to background extras. But so essentially, once you're registered with Central Casting or any other casting agency, I can only speak from my experience with Central Casting, but once you're registered, you're able to be called upon to be a background extra for a show. Like I've done work on Young Sheldon, I've done background work on Euphoria and Ballers, as you mentioned, SWAT 911. And so it's a different experience each time depending on the show that you're involved in. I've met a lot of great people, a lot of fellow background extras. One of my current roommates right now, I actually met John through Central Casting, through working on a show called I'm Dying Up Here. And so it depends on the show that you book, but you could find yourself being in the background of like a large crowd scene at a stadium, or you could be wearing a fireman's outfit, and just drenched in sweat running around. I've been a cop before in cop uniform. That story was interesting because when you're in police uniform, it's not a real uniform. It's just an outfit. It's a costume. So they told me to stay away from like the windows and from like the outside, because they didn't want me to accidentally be interpreted as like impersonating a cop, you know, like that would have been a big problem for the agency, for the casting, and for myself included. So there's a lot of really cool opportunities with being a background extra, and it's not always glamorous. Sometimes they feed you really well. I've been on shows where the food is exquisite, like buffet style. And again, this is all pre-COVID. Everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. No, everything changed when COVID happened. That's a whole other story. But essentially, with the way the industry is now, things have slowed down significantly than compared to pre-COVID days. Um, Anyone who follows entertainment news is aware of the fact that the industry had dual strikes happen. You had the Writers Guild of America striking, and then the Screen Actors Guild striking. So you had the two like of the most important aspects of making movies and TV shows, the writers and actors striking for more rights, more protections, more guarantees. And so, like, it's just been such a staggering time in the years I've lived out here, because like not long after I started living out here was the Harvey Weinstein scandal, which led to the Me Too movement, which needed to happen so that these men in power can be held accountable for their damaging actions and like suffer the consequences, because they deserve to suffer for mistreating and making other people suffer. And then you had COVID happen, and we all know about COVID. And then the industry was just coming back and like getting back to normalcy when you know the unions decided to strike and fight for more protections, more guarantees for its members. So I'm not a member of the Writers Guild or Screen Actors Guild by being an extra or trying to pursue a career in as a writer. It's definitely, to join those unions, you have to put in a lot of work. You have to take a lot of steps to get there, and fulfill a lot of prerequisites. And I have a couple friends who are SAG members, but specifically with background extras, a lot of us do non-union work, and I've always been non-union. Once you're part of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, that makes you a union person. So you can only work union jobs if you're part of SAG. You can't work non-union. And there's more non-union jobs than there are union jobs, if that makes sense. But yeah, I've had a lot of really cool experiences being a background extra, and specifically, you mentioned the Dwayne Johnson story. This was like back in 2018 as well, where Ballers was still on the air. They were shooting on campus at UCLA, which is a full circle moment. First of all, it was so great to be back on campus, but then to be working not too far off from The Rock. And like, at the time, his movie Skyscraper hadn't come out yet, and I was looking forward to seeing that. And so one of the spoken and also unspoken rules of your etiquette when you're a background extra is that if you're on a show where you have some really big talent like Meryl Streep or Dwayne Johnson or Colin Farrell, you stay professional. You don't go up to them and be like, "Oh, I'm a huge fan. Like I love your work. Can you help me get this job? Or can you give me some money?" Like, no, you just don't do that. It's just so unprofessional. So knowing that, and I'm always professional, of course. But I was like, look, it's when is the next time I'm going to see The Rock in person? When's the next time I'm going to see Dwayne Johnson? Like, so I came up with this idea on the spot where I'm not going to get into his personal space, but the scene we were shooting on campus for Ballers was, me and this other guy were walking side by side. We were students on this campus, and like we passed by The Rock, who's like, having a meeting with someone sitting at a table. And so it was really sunny, really hot that day in particular. So whenever they said cut and shooting would stop, The Rock would go over to a tree and stand under the shade, get some protection from the sun. And so I had my cue starting, one side, and they'd yell action. I'd walk across and stop somewhere else. They'd say cut, and we'd basically go back to point A where we started. So I was like, okay, the next time they yell cut and I have to go back to position A, I'll say something to him as I walk by. So I'm not going to like get in his space. I'm not going to like interrupt him or like, in theory, I'm not going to interrupt him. Hopefully I catch him in a good mood, but I'm not going to get in his personal space. And I'm not going to like, be that guy who's like, hey, like, let me go talk to The Rock, while he's like in the middle of shooting and like taking a break in the shade. So the director yells cut, The Rock goes back to the shade, and me and my friend Daniel were walking back to point A, and I'm like, hey man, I pointed at The Rock. He looked at me, and I was like, you're awesome. I can't wait for Skyscraper. And then he flashes that big smile. He's like, hey, thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. And I was like, that's great. Mission accomplished. First of all, I told him something I was genuinely feeling like, hey, I'm excited for your new movie. You're awesome. And not long after that, it was funny. Another extra, she just went for it, went up to The Rock and was talking to him. And, they had like a brief 1 or 2 minute exchange, and he gave her a hug. And so I wasn't that bold like she was, but I was like, okay, like I'm gonna like there. When is the next time I'm gonna talk to The Rock? Like, so I had my way. I was able to compliment him and say I'm excited about his new movie, and he was able to, express that gratitude towards me. It was cool. It was cool. So anyone who gets into it for the first time, they're definitely gonna have a lot of those starstruck moments where they're like, oh my gosh, this is like so cool being on a set, you know. And I have friends who have worked on shows like The Mandalorian, Ahsoka. I have a friend who was actually like a stunt double on Mandalorian, who had dirt thrown on him by Jon Favreau, and like you get some really cool experiences being a background extra, but it's just a matter of like maintaining that professionalism and like not letting your starstruck moments get the best of you. It's always important to just maintain that professionalism and kind of keep yourself humbled at the same time.
All right. Well, now that's that one first. That's awesome. And yes, very good advice. You don't want to be starstruck and then sitting here and make yourself look like a fool
Yeah.
during work. We're going to continue to move forward. I'm just going to show you some pictures, and you're just going to kind of talk about them. Tell me who this person is. How do you briefly, how did you meet them and stuff? Where you're kind of at, and we'll just kind of go on forward like that.
Sounds good.
Sounds like a good idea. All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
here's the first one. Ready? Boom.
Yeah, so this is Gareth Edwards, a legendary sci-fi director of movies like Godzilla 2014, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. He also recently directed The Creator. I'm trying to think of the other movie he made before The Creator. But yeah, this was a screening opportunity for The Creator at Walt Disney Studios, and he was nice enough to stay afterwards for the reception, and he mingled with a lot of the guests there, and I had a great opportunity to get a photo with him over here. And my girlfriend Dilcia wasn't able to make it that night, but she wanted me to pass along to him that she's a huge fan of Rogue One. Rogue One is one of her favorite Star Wars movies, so he appreciated hearing that from her through me, that she's a big fan of the movie.
That's awesome. Yeah, Rogue One, I would say, like, when it first came out, yeah, I enjoyed Rogue One. It's one of the few ones that, since Disney kind of took over, that I've actually really enjoyed. Rogue One's definitely one of those. But
we could definitely have a whole other episode of this podcast where we talk about your disdain for the sequel trilogy. That's a whole other subject right there. But Rogue One is definitely beloved. I will say it is very beloved. It doesn't have as much controversy surrounding it as the other sequel trilogy movies have.
Yeah. All right, next. All right, this guy, he's pretty popular, I would say. So let's see, boom, right here.
Oh yes, this is Zack Snyder, and for everyone who's familiar with anything geek related, comic book, DC specifically, DC related comic book lore, this man is responsible for the Snyderverse, which started with his Man of Steel movie in 2013, the Superman origin story, Man of Steel. And that movie was meant to kickstart the DC extended universe, which is essentially what Warner Brothers wanted to follow in Marvel and Disney's footsteps with what they did with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU. And so Man of Steel was released. He did Batman versus Superman, and that got a lot of mixed responses from critics, from audiences. Like, the tone was like really dark. And so essentially he has a huge diehard fan base. They will defend him to the very last second. We could have a whole other episode going in depth with the Zack Snyder lore, but that was an opportunity where I got to go to the premiere for Rebel Moon, which, in correlation with Star Wars, actually, Rebel Moon, before it became Rebel Moon, it was a Star Wars spec script that he had written, but he had a meeting with Lucasfilm. They didn't necessarily see eye to eye on the project, like on what he wanted to do. And like, I think at the time they were more focused on establishing the sequel trilogy, you know, because like at that point, Disney had bought Lucasfilm for $4 billion, and they were more focused on getting a new trilogy of movies out there. And so he reworked this Star Wars spec script into his own sci-fi lore, which became Rebel Moon. And I got to go to the premiere last, what was it? Like, I think it was December. Yeah, December 2023 with one of my friends from Warner Brothers, Walter Perez. We had a fantastic time, and Zack Snyder was really nice enough to stay afterwards and mingle with the guests. Because, you know, the guests, it was like a mixture of people who worked on the film. Some of the actors were there as well, but it was also like a lot of, you know, fans of his were there. You know,
Mhm.
people had the opportunity to get tickets for this event specifically through like a website called One Iota, which is a website where they promote a lot of live events. And if they need a big crowd, this is that kind of website where they can fulfill that need. They'll put out an ad, or they'll put out like a listing asking for people to register and come to this event, be seat fillers, or like, you know, just to get a big crowd. And so I think this was one of those movies where they wanted to have a crowd and get people out there. I didn't get it through One Iota. I got it through the FYC app that I mentioned, For Your Consideration app. And yeah, that was a fantastic opportunity. It was so great meeting the legend himself. You know, his his,
All right.
his fans. I don't consider myself a huge diehard Snyder fan. I'm a fan. Don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but like, there's some really crazy Snyder fans out there who are still lobbying for Henry Cavill to be Superman, even though they've already cast James Cornerswet as the new Superman. But they're still lobbying for Henry to be back and for Zack Snyder to finish his version
Yeah,
of
it's a
Justice
whole
League.
big,
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
big thing.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I know a lot. I know a handful of people that definitely prefer the most recent Superman. But all right, we're gonna continue forward now. Next picture, boom, this one.
Yes. Now this one's going to be a fun, especially a fun one to talk about, because this was a 15th anniversary screening of the first Twilight movie, which was directed by Catherine Hardwicke. There in the middle, right to the right, is my lovely girlfriend Dilcia Guzman, and we had the opportunity to go to this screening. This one we actually bought tickets for before they sold out. It was like, I think $13, $14 a piece, but we had the opportunity to go, and Catherine Hardwicke was there for a Q&A afterwards. And so she talked about her process making the film, how essentially the studio didn't know what they had their hands with, you know, like they didn't know how huge Twilight would become. And so essentially she had the free reign and the creative freedom to do what she wanted to do, which was essentially make a big budget independent film. This is what she talked
Mhm.
about her process. And it was really interesting hearing her talk about the audition process with like Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart, and how Robert Pattinson was feeling a little like self-conscious about himself, like he wasn't really sure if he was the right person for the role, you know. And this is the role that would define his career for a big majority of his career, like, you know, like it's such a star making role. And the movies that followed the first one like just got bigger and bigger budgets and were astronomically huge hits at the box office, you know. I
Yeah.
know you and Irene
So,
are big fans of Twilight.
so I would say we'll probably have to make another episode of just Twilight itself because
Sure.
we definitely, being in Washington, went to Forks. We did the whole Twilight thing over there. It's so much, so we're definitely gonna have to come back to this one. But we're gonna continue to move forward.
Sure.
Twilight is definitely another topic that we can 100% talk about for a very long time. But moving forward, let's see. The next picture I have is this one.
Yeah, this is another recent screening. This is the actor David Oyelowo. best known for playing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in
Mhm.
Selma, Ava DuVernay's film in 2015. And this was for a screening of the new show that he's in, Lawman, Bass Reeves. And it's a Paramount Plus TV show, but essentially the first African American lawman, and he's excellent in the show. This was a screening of the pilot episode, and you know, for a lot of these screenings, sometimes the talent or the directors or writers, they'll stay afterwards to mingle, especially if there's like a reception afterwards. Or in this case, this screening was for another 4-year consideration guild screening, and he mingled with a lot of the guests there. And the main thing I wanted to tell him was the amazing experience I had watching Selma back home in Florida before I moved to LA, and the electric experience seeing it on Martin Luther King Jr. Day specifically. I waited to watch the movie specifically on that day because I knew the experience would be so much more satisfying. But the energy in the theater was electric. People were like, it was a packed theater. Everyone was so into it, like they were audibly gasping and like responding verbally to what was happening on the screen. So I definitely, I had to tell him about it, and it was great that I got to explain to him the experience I had watching Selma and the powerful performance he gave, and like how people were just so into it, and like it was fantastic.
That's awesome. Now, yeah, that was a good movie. And I do want to say that I know that typically this is supposed to be like a whole Star Wars thing, this podcast and stuff. But I wanted to be a little bit more than just Star Wars. I wanted to be like all cinema, really. Star Wars is going to be definitely the thing that we definitely, I got to stop saying definitely so much. What's going on with me? But the big thing that I come back to will be Star Wars. And I want to hit up another hobby that you have, and you've kind of made a habit for, and that is going to filming locations and kind of reenacting specific scenes from those movies or shows and stuff. So I have like 4 examples here. I'm going to
Sure.
show them off real quick. 2 of them include us too, but yeah, let's start off with those first. So this was back in 2020. I want to say it was 2020 or 2021. Still COVID era. You came and visited us in Seattle, Washington,
Yeah, that was
and
definitely the
we
summer of
got to
2020.
reenact. Yeah, and we got to do Sleepless in Seattle, right?
Oh yeah.
Definitely fun. This is just one of the small things that we did together. You came over, you're like, hey, we got to hit up these spots because I really want to do this. And I was like, all right, sure. Yeah, well, let's go down to Seattle real quick. It's only a little bit of a drive, nothing too crazy. And we got to reenact a couple of the scenes. Well, that is actually the restaurant Athenian. I forget if it's Anthenia or Athenians.
Yeah, I completely forgot the name of it to begin with. I could probably find it in the description on my Instagram. But
I
yeah,
will
like what?
say the food is
Yeah.
good, and their clam chowder was really good too. Every time I went over there, I got the clam chowder because it was just that good. If you're gonna be in Seattle, you definitely gotta go to Pike's Place. Hit up Athenians. I think it's Athenians,
Yeah,
and
or just Google "Sleepless in Seattle" restaurant, and then you'll
yeah,
definitely
and
find your
it'll
result.
pop up. And yeah, so that was very fun. And I have another one. Um, let's see. It is right here. We did this scene as well. Same movie. Boom.
Oh
You can
yeah.
see slowly like how things kind of change. The sign's a little bit different right above us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But hey, everything, look, the cars are different. Like just showing the time difference between the first picture and our version of it. But yeah, that
Absolutely.
was very
Yeah.
cool. It was definitely very fun to do, and I hope we can do more of that. But you have some cooler ones. These are
Mm-hmm.
cool because we're both in it, friends
Of
doing
course.
friend things. But you
Absolutely.
have some other cool ones that I think Star Wars fans are especially going to. enjoy. So let's get to the next one. Uh, if you're a Star Wars fan at all, you're gonna know what this is. So let's just get to it right here.
Oh.
Boom. So you don't know what that is, and you definitely need to rewatch Star Wars because it's one of the biggest and key things in the Star Wars universe. Everybody's gonna know. It's like very iconic. The Millennium Falcon, you gotta know it. And I think this scene was from, was it The Force Awakens? I want to say The Force
Yes.
Awakens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
Force
return of Han
Awakens.
Solo, the return of Harrison Ford in the role that made him a movie star. This
Yep,
was,
that he
yeah.
definitely wanted to die, and he got his wish.
He'd been wanting his character to die since Return of the Jedi. He wanted that heroic death, and George Lucas was not having it. He was like, "No, that's not going to happen.
No.
I'm not going to have Han Solo killed." So all those years later, like it finally happened. But yeah, this was at Disneyland Park in Anaheim, and this was back when I went with my roommates. I think it was April 2022. Yeah, so everyone who knows me knows I live, breathe, and eat movies. So I love any chance I get to recreate a movie scene or a scene from a TV show. I'll get the chance to do it. You know, if I find out like a place is a filming location, sometimes I've sought out these locations intentionally. Sometimes they've been accidentally discovered. But this was one of those very intentional, like, okay, I'm here. I may not be in the Han Solo outfit. That'll come later. We got a photo to show later, me in the actual Han Solo outfit. But this was one of those moments where, like, okay, I'm on the Falcon. Like, let's get these shots. Let's get it real quick. Like, you know, we'll have to wait a little bit, let some other people pass us after we get off the ride. But, like, let's do these real quick. Because it's like, when's the next time I'm going to be on a Falcon like this and have a chance
Yeah.
to do this, you know?
All right. Now we got one last one. And this one as well, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to know this iconic scene. It's definitely a very quotable one. And I'm just going to show it here. Want to buy some death sticks?
Yes. Yes. This is me and my brother, Philip. When I went to visit Florida recently, he and I went to one of we were at the park, and I think this was on May 4th, if I'm not mistaken, May 4th of last year, or a Star Wars Day. Either way, we celebrated Star Wars real hard that day, and he and I went to this Star Wars cantina at the park, and, you know, we got drinks together at the bar, and it was totally surreal. First of all, having a drink with my brother, you know, growing up together, consuming Star Wars VHS tapes, and then growing older together, and then parting ways when I moved out to LA, and then reconnecting anytime I would visit and just spending time together. This is a great opportunity to just hang out with him, have a drink, and, you know, I was like, okay, like, let me get the bartender to take this photo real quick. Let's recreate the scene from Attack of the Clones. You know, you want to buy some death sticks? You don't want to sell me death sticks. I don't want to sell you death sticks. You want to go home and rethink your life. I want to go home and rethink my life. So it was great.
Very
You know,
iconic scene.
absolutely. It's all the more meaningful when I get to do it. You know, recreate scenes with my family or my friends. You know, it just makes it all the more meaningful and fun.
Yeah. And yeah, it definitely makes it a little bit better when you're doing with people that you actually like care about, you love. You're not by yourself. You know, sometimes it's cool to do things by yourself, but you know, it's definitely way better when you have other people around, especially when they have the same love for that movie or the same kind of hobby as you. I
Absolutely.
definitely
The
did
most
enjoy
recent,
doing ours.
exactly. The most recent scene recreation I did was with my girlfriend on the Millennium Falcon. She and I went to Star Wars Night at Disneyland on May 7th, and she and I actually had our first kiss on the Millennium Falcon, which was my plan. Our first kiss was last year, but this year when we went to Star Wars Night together, she designed this excellent Han Solo vest, and it was my first time actually doing cosplay. I think you're gonna pull up the photo. Here we go. Yeah, she made that vest by hand, putting fabric together that we got at downtown LA, and she made pockets that had actual buttons. I was able to fit so much in that jacket that night. It was so convenient, and she spent a lot
That's
of time
awesome.
and hours on this. And the results are fantastic. She also crocheted that Leia vest that she's wearing there, the long sleeve. Yeah,
Hmm.
she's a fantastic
Very
craftsperson.
talented.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
so after we got these photos, we did the smugglers run on the Falcon, and
Yeah.
right before we actually did the ride, you know, we asked one of the cast members if they could take a photo of us doing the kiss in the actual spot. When I kissed her last year for the first time on the Falcon, I didn't do it at the exact spot because I was like, I'll kiss her on the Falcon, but like I don't want to like copy the movie. You know, I don't want our first kiss to just be a carbon copy. No pun intended. Carbonite. No pun intended there. But I didn't want it to be a carbonite copy of the movie. I was like, okay, it'll be on the Falcon, but like I'll kiss her spontaneously. It's not going to be at that exact moment. But this year, like because we were in the outfits, it was like okay, like let's kiss in the actual corner where Han and Leia kissed, and let's do the photo. And it came out fantastic. It was fabulous.
Yeah, I'm very happy for you, man. I know definitely the whole LA life has been a struggle. It hasn't always been glamorous, you know.
Yeah.
Definitely can be hard. You know, California ain't cheap,
Mm-hmm.
and you got your ups and your downs. But I'm glad that you're continuing to pursue your interests and continuing to, you know, push for your dreams. That's very important for anybody who's trying to do anything. Hey, try to prove the doubters wrong. Continue to move forward. Continue to keep your head down and grind until you get to where you're trying to go. And
Absolutely.
you're definitely a
Fortunately,
big example of that.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah. Fortunately for me, in my case, even when I was in elementary school, going through middle school and high school, I experienced so much positivity and so much encouragement from not just my teachers, but also my peers and my family. My family has always been loving and encouraging for me pursuing my dreams and what I want to do in this industry. But it's always been amazing to have that support, not just from my family, but my friends and my teachers, because like it's so encouraging, it's so validating. And you know, like I never experienced what a lot of other people go through where they have like people who question them or doubt them or like doubt their capabilities. Like I've had the complete opposite, just like extreme positivity, extreme, you know, encouragement, and like people who genuinely believe that I can accomplish the kind of goals that I have for my life and what I want to accomplish. Um, but yeah, and like, and you've always been one of those guys who's been extremely encouraging and supportive, and you know, been there for me to help me out, and you know, show that support. So I especially appreciate that from you.
Oh, I'm definitely here for you, brother. Especially when you get big, you know. Yeah, give a little this guy right here. You know what I'm saying?
Of course, only
But
only for the people who deserve it, and certainly you're one of those who deserves it.
well, good. I'm glad I'm one of those people, man. All right. Well, what a time it has been. We definitely went over the time that we were planning on going, but it's
Mhm.
okay. You know, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
We're doing a whole bi-weekly release. So it won't be this next week, but the following week, I will be posting another video, hopefully with another guest. We're gonna get another perspective as Danny is doing the whole, you know, trying to become a writer or a producer or a director type of aspect of it. His girlfriend is trying to do the actress part of it. So hopefully I can get her on. Hopefully she's
Yeah.
still for
Yeah.
it. But she should
Yeah.
be here on the third episode of the Nacho Jedi podcast. I'm very excited and looking forward to doing it. But once again, thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, thank you. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Nacho Jedi podcast. And if you want to see more of, Danny's cool, hobbies of, meeting celebrities or going to really cool film location spots, follow him on Instagram, Whereisdanny. And then make sure you follow me at the Nacho Jedi 66. And yeah, thank you. You take it easy, brother. Appreciate you for
Thanks.
being on.
Thanks for having me, man. This was fantastic.